as well, because another question people have is Bernie Sanders. They said Ajamu Baraka had such harsh words for Bernie Sanders, and I have not read, so I'm totally going to be educated by you on this. What are your
Yeah.
feelings about Bernie Sanders, and what was critical? What was the critical statement about?
Well, I think, as I indicated earlier, I thought that the Bernie Sanders run was a very significant one. It demonstrated that there's real potential for some change here in the U.S. And believe me, I wanted to feel the burn, and I was in fact in contact with members of the Bernie campaign at the very beginning, but I couldn't pull the trigger, Tim, because I saw some tendencies there that I was really concerned about. I didn't think that Brother Bernie was going to break from the Democratic Party, and I guess that turned out to be true. The other concern I had was that, in just focusing in on domestic policy and being relatively silent on foreign policy, and then when he did comment about foreign policy, some of his positions were positions that, as a black person, as a black internationalist, I had real concern with. And so I had to raise the question as to what the implications were. And this is what I was dealing with specifically. I raised the issue with Sanders, and not so much his supporters, but I kind of raised the question with them too, because I wanted this campaign to be as effective as it could be. I said, why can't we have a truly progressive candidacy? Why can't we have one that both embraces positive and forward-thinking domestic policy, but also foreign policy?
Right.
Why does Bernie have to embrace the illegal drone war of Barack Obama, and in fact becoming, if he was to become president, another war criminal in essence? That wasn't necessary. The people were ready for real change. It wasn't necessary, Bernie. Why is it that Bernie Sanders talks about that the Saudis needed to be the ones to take the lead in combating terrorism in the Middle East and other parts of the world, when we all know, who follow this stuff, that is the radical Wahhabism that's supported financially by the Saudis, that is the ideological base of the jihadist movement around the world, without any real constraints imposed on them by the U.S. government. So their hands are already dirty. We know that the Saudis' hands are dirty in Syria. We know that the Saudis' hands were dirty in Egypt and the coup in Egypt that took place. We know that the Saudis' hands are dirty and dripping with blood in Yemen that nobody talks about, and so many people don't even know about. With the full support of the U.S., they've been waging a brutal and illegal war in Yemen for the last 9 months. So it's like, Bernie, you can't do that, and you can't, say that you are concerned about Black Lives Mattering in the U.S. and not be concerned about the lives of people in Yemen.
That's
or
true.
the lives of people in Syria.
That's true.
And what that implies in terms of talking about the Saudis being, getting their hands dirty, is this kind of old colonialist sort of mentality that let the natives fight among themselves. We don't need to be involved, And I said that is fundamentally a white supremacist position. And I was asking his supporters to not go down that road. It was not necessary, and it was unprincipled.
I hear you.
Now,
I hear you. Yeah.
for people, Tim, who were serious about really real, revolutionary change, and who understood what I was saying in terms of the critique of the potential white supremacy in those positions, they didn't have a problem with it, including people like Dr. Cornel West,
Right.
who is one of the most visible supporters of Bernie Sanders. In fact, and so where's Dr. West today? He's with us. He was with us at CNN. He's with me in Houston, when I accepted the nomination. He's with us all the way because he's mature enough to understand that we have these kind of critiques among ourselves, but the objective is for us to be better and more principled, and that's what we have to do. If people are serious about real change in this country, You can't be afraid of engaging in real serious critique.
There you
You
go.
can't be afraid of criticism, because the objective is for us to transcend this and to be better. And we can't be better if we can't be honest.
That is real. That is so real. That's so real. Right now, what's in the news headlines? They're talking about this football player from the 49ers who wouldn't stand up to
Yes.
salute the flag until he says he sees some change in how we deal with police shootings of unarmed citizens. Is this a bunch of crap or what? I don't know. I just want your opinion on this. Um, uh, what do you think about that whole nationalism, patriotism? Looks like a black man can't be a patriot in their opinion.
Well, that's a very interesting kind of conversation. One I think we need to have honestly. I think the brother has all the right in the world to express himself in that way. I think that the conversation that is generating is a good conversation because, one of the other things they tried to hit me on was, my position that basically the only way we're going to build a new society in the U.S. is that we've got to disconnect, de-link from this kind of historical narrative that this our founding fathers and the pursuit of the more perfect nation and the moving across the nation and settling the nation, and this is such a wonderful thing. No, if we don't respect the experiences of all people in this country and this experience here in the U.S., we can't look at how this looked from the vantage point of the indigenous people who watched these settlers move from the East Coast all the way across their territory, shooting and killing and enslaving them, for 100 years. If we can't remember the fact that, we didn't show up here on the Mayflower ourselves. We showed up here in the bows of ships, and we have a perspective, and our perspective may not be the same as the perspective of some white middle class person whose great grandfather or grandfather mother came over here through Ellis Island.
That's right.
And that we've got to disconnect from that fantasy, that fairy tale of U.S. exceptionalism.
Wow.
That we can't build a new society based on a bunch of nonsense. These founding fathers, these founding rapists, who basically raped and mutilated people because they all were slave owners. No. We don't have to embrace that history. We have another history of struggle, a principled fight back. There were people who fought against the U.S. Experiment. So, we don't have to be forced to always do this performative patriotism kind of thing. We fought in every conflict this country's been involved in. And what was the consequence? We come back after World War I, what happens? We are murdered and lynched across the country.
That's right.
We come back after World War II, the fight against racism and Nazism in Europe. What happens? We got to fight and get subjected to lynchings across the country.
Segregation.
We go to Vietnam, Korea, the same kinds of things.
Right.
No. We don't have to prove anything to anybody.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. It sounds like you want Americans to wake up and tell the truth. I'm just seeing their heads explode right now, even thinking about because it's so embedded in our politics, like in our movies, in our media. Our pop culture is just built on this worshiping of police, this worshiping of the military, that we're always doing things for the greater good, and it would be a total shift, I think, Ajamu, for people. And I think it needs to happen. Don't get me wrong. It definitely needs to happen. Like, that's the only way. That's what I try to do every day, is make people wake up to the realities of poverty, even their own circumstances. I get frustrated, Ajamu. Maybe you have some words of wisdom on it, but the fact that all the people that are suffering in poverty, white, black, Latino, Asian, what we're dealing with, and they're still buying into the corporate mainstream BS.
What, Tim, is understandable, because it is people are bombarded through all of our major social institutions, all of our major communication institutions and structures to
Right.
basically buy into and assimilate the dominant set of ideals, the dominant ideology. And that ideology is one that is completely committed to the fantasy of get rich or die trying, of materialism, of your humanity, your value as a human being is reflected in what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you live in, what kind of clothes you're wearing, and if that is your definition of your value as a human, then that's what you pursue in order to feel that you exist and to try to win recognition. We have to shift those kinds of values, but it's difficult when you are socialized into those kind of values from the time you're able to think and hear things, But that's our task, because we're not going to be able to wake people up to the fact that it is the very values they have that are tying them into a system that cannot really address their real needs. They're not going to result in them getting the kind of riches and wealth that they think they should have, and that if they, if they can't, get it by legitimate means, they then will pursue illegitimate means, which ends up with our folks involved in this mass incarceration process. We got to break people away from those kind of values, but it's tough because these are the dominant ideals, the dominant values, the dominant ideology in this country. But there's hope, Tim, because you look at the polling among young people and of all races, and people are really raising some serious questions about the values of this country, serious questions about the values of capitalism and competition and accepted inequality, and individualism. Those things are now being seriously questioned, and that's why, again, the Sanders folks in the Sanders campaign has such great potential, because he was talking about democratic socialism, even though he could have gone a lot further, but at least people were exposed to that term and looked it up and started thinking about it and talking about it, and that's the kind of changes we have to have here in this country. That's what we're doing with this campaign, Tim. The objective of this campaign is to engage the American people, to talk about these kind of things, to look at the kind of policy we believe that we need to have as a transition program. You were saying earlier about whether or not your grandkids are going to be able to live. If we don't transform the economy and this society to a green economy and green commitment to social relations, we're not going to survive.